G'day and welcome to another episode of Cuppa with the Jesuit. I'm Father Robin Koning, the Provincial Assistant for Vocations for the Australian Province.
I'm Julian Butler, a Jesuit in formation, and Father Robin and I are joined today by Father Sacha Bermudez-Goldman. Father Sacha, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sacha, you're currently living at Newman College at the University of Melbourne and working with students there and with young people across the Jesuit province here in Australia. Would you tell us a bit about that work, what you're up to?
Sure. Thanks, Julian. As you mentioned, I'm at Newman College, which is one of the residential colleges of Melbourne University. And we have about 300 students. Even with the lockdowns and the pandemic, we've managed to keep most of the students. So I'm one of the 4 Jesuit chaplains there. Just supporting the students in different ways through different activities, Bible study, the masses, of course, reflection groups, and just being a presence in general, just being there to support the students. And I'm also part of the young adult ministry for the province for the Australian Jesuits, and in promoting some community and service opportunities for young people, developing some formation programs, personal development and faith development for them. And also in my spare time, I teach. I teach spirituality at the Jesuit College of Spirituality, how it's associated with Australian Catholic University. And my area is the spiritual exercises of St Ignatius of Loyola. So that's a few of the things that I'm doing at the moment.
And your life of ministry certainly didn't start when you joined the Jesuits, did you? You were involved in a whole range of international work of various sorts. Could you tell us a bit about what you were up to before you joined the Jesuits?
Sure, thanks, Robin. Actually, I only joined the Jesuits as I was turning 36, so I had done quite a few things before joining the society. I did my initial degree was in engineering. I was an architectural engineer. I did my master's as well and worked as a few years in Chicago, in Houston. I studied in Texas. After that, I took a break from engineering and I never went back, actually. Instead, I joined a development agency in the United States. And with them, I was doing training programs, preparing young teachers. And in 1 year, I remember traveling over to 20 countries or more, all over the world. Actually, it was quite nice. I was saying earlier, once I heard the comment and joined the Jesuits and see the world, but I'd already seen the world and then I joined the Jesuits. And I've seen a bit more of the world since joining the Jesuits. But through that work, actually, I came into contact with a missionary society that sent both priests and brothers and religious sisters, but also lay people on mission to different parts in developing nations in particular. So I was very blessed. I joined them, I was accepted, and then I was a missionary with them for 7 years. And I got to work in Latin America and also in Africa and in Asia. So in 3 different countries, 3 different continents over 7 years. My first placement was in Tanzania, and I was 4 years there. And that in particular was a life-changing experience for me, really. It was a very difficult time. It was in the early 90s. There was a drought. By the time I got there, I think it was on the 3rd year, and it continued through my 4 years there. So there was a lot of suffering, a lot going on. But it was really, I guess, for me, life-changing. We worked in a Catholic mission in a very small village in the center of the country, and just witnessing the faith of the people there, despite all the hardship, despite all the suffering, just the trust in God. People would say, I learned Swahili because people didn't speak English, but in Swahili they used to say, Mpango wa Mungu, which means the plan of God. God has a plan for us. And just truly trusting and believing that. For me, it was wonderful to witness. And in terms of my faith journey, it was a turning point. And in particular, to see how people could have so little in their lives, but still be faithful in the faith, but also grateful. So certainly, I think more than anything else, I learned the value of gratitude, I think, at that time. And then I worked in Costa Rica for a year, and then in Cambodia for a couple more years.
As I understand it, you hadn't really come across the Jesuits until then, but it was in Cambodia that you made contact with the Jesuits.
Exactly, yeah. At the time, this was again in the mid-90s, there were not that many international missionaries or people from the church working. So those of us who were there got to know each other quite well. And I was invited, I still remember I was invited to join in the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The Jesuits, it was a Spanish Jesuit who organized a mass, and they invited me to join. I had come across another Jesuit. I was teaching at the time at the University of Phnom Penh, teacher training again. And I shared my office with one Jesuit, an Irish Jesuit who had been a missionary there and continued to be a missionary for many years until recently. But then, in particular, meeting a few more Jesuits at that mass was when I started more my relationship with them. To be honest, I hadn't thought about religious life much at all until then. Again, I've been working with priests and sisters and brothers in my years as a missionary, but you know, I always imagine I imagine a life of marriage and family rather than a life of priesthood. But meeting them, meeting a few other young men who were working there, who were considering priesthood, got me thinking about this way of life. And so I asked one of the Jesuits if he would be my spiritual director. He would accompany me in the discernment process, and that's how I guess I began the relationship with the Jesuits. But often people ask me, if I can say this, people ask me why the Jesuits and why not this particular group you were working with. And really, I think not that this other group didn't have a deep faith, but in the Jesuits who I met in Cambodia, I experienced or witnessed a very deep faith and a deep commitment to service for those in need, both through advocacy and at the time, you might remember the history of Cambodia, the landmines planted there over the Civil War years. And so the Jesuits were very much involved in the international campaign to ban landmines at the time. So very strongly working in advocacy, but also they were doing very practical work. So one of the major areas was training of survivors of landmines, amputees in particular. As you know, it's very difficult to plant rice if you don't have legs or an arm. So people needed to find a new way to support their families, and the Jesuits were providing some of those training places to do that. And also, I'd like to say that I was very much attracted by the Jesuits' humanity. They were real people. I remember had met priests in the past before, and I sometimes had conversations with them asking how things were going. And usually they would say, things are going well. But with the Jesuits, who were very real. They were very honest. It was a difficult time. The resources were limited. So they had to make decisions as to who they would help. And that's always a very difficult decision to make, as you can imagine. Yeah, just again, that sense of, I hope it doesn't sound strange, but with others, I always felt, no, priesthood is for the holy ones. This is, you know, it's, I'm in that category kind of thing. Meeting the Jesuits, I realized, no, it can be for me as well. And at the time I read, I was given by my spiritual director, the Jesuit accompanying me, some of our documents from one of our congregations. And in particular, that phrase, how do we define ourselves as Jesuits? And it was, you know, we are sinners, but redeemed and loved by God. And that really spoke to me. Again, I could see myself being defined by that statement as well. And I truly believe that. So, and I'm not from Australia originally, but I wanted to stay in this part of the world to continue to be connected with Cambodia. And so, as you know, we Jesuits are divided into regions or areas of the world. And so it was suggested that I could join in Australia. I had visited here before, so I was really happy to come. and that was 23 years ago now, this month actually. So yeah.
Father Sacha, just in talking about what you're up to now and what led you to the society, it sounds very much like working with people who are marginalised and displaced is important to you, as is working with young people and sharing spiritual exercises, Ignatius' spirituality. Would you share with us a little bit of how you've been able to do that as a Jesuit, how you've been able to live your passions since you joined?
Certainly. Thanks, Julian. Actually, the main two areas since I joined the society that I've been asked to be involved in is with young people, with young adults, and also with forcibly displaced people. So with refugees and asylum seekers, internally displaced peoples. When I lived in Tanzania, the Rwanda genocide took place. So there was an influx of millions, literally, of Rwandese coming over the border into Tanzania. And living in Cambodia too, didn't have that many, but we had a good group of people who came asking for asylum. I had lived in France before, so I spoke French. So I sometimes helped as an interpreter for some of the people who, in particular from some of the Arab nations who I didn't speak Arabic, but I could speak French with them. And so I was very honored to be asked to be director of Jesuit Refugee Service here in Australia, and I did that for a few years in Sydney. And then again working with young adults, during particularly leading up to the time of the World Youth Day in Sydney and the Ignatian, the Jesuit program that we had here. And again, in the last few years also working with the young adult ministry. But I also was very fortunate to be able to do a doctorate. Actually, I was asked to do it. It was suggested to me, and I said I'd love to do it in an area that brings two of, I guess, my passions together, and that was the support of forcibly displaced peoples, and also our spirituality, our Ignatian spirituality. So my doctorate was on how to support how to nurture look after the spiritual needs of forcibly displaced peoples through the Ignatian lens, so through our Ignatian spirituality. It was a great gift. It was a lot of work, I have to say, but very happy to have done it. And so now, again, I'm in the process of developing a program, hopefully to be able to offer some spiritual exercises that have been adapted for those needs to be offered to forcibly displaced people who have resettled here in Australia.
Beautiful. Father Sacha, given what drew you into the society and how you've lived your passions as a Jesuit, if a young man came to you now and talked about being interested in religious life, interested maybe in the Jesuits, what would you say to him?
Yeah, thank you, Julian. As I mentioned earlier, I was older when I entered the society, and 36. It's not something that I had thought about, and I didn't again know much about the Jesuits at the time. But it just felt right. It felt the right thing to try, if I can say it. It was a bit of a leap of faith, to be honest, because moving into a new country, I had only visited here before with a group I knew a little bit about, but not a lot. So I think based on that, I guess what I would say to a young person, a young man today would be what Jesus said to his disciples: do not be afraid. Don't be afraid to consider this way of life as perhaps part of God's dream for you, and as a way to experience more deeply God's love in your life, and as a way to share that love with others. So yeah, give it a try, find out more about what this life is about, and don't be afraid, because the Lord is there with you, guiding you.
Indeed, he is. That's a great point to finish our conversation. Thank you very much, Sacha, for giving us this time and sharing so richly from your life and experience and journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, and thank you, Julian. Lovely to be with you. God bless.
God bless.